David, man, we are so thankful and so blessed for you to take time to spend time with us. College football season just around the corner, and you're going to be rocking and rolling. You're one of the top voices in all of college football. Man, I love learning from you, first of all, and we're going to learn from you today. We want you to coach us up, David, on just some life topics, some faith topics, some football topics, and just kind of step to the front of the room like we're in a film room, man. You're the head coach, and we're just going to listen to you for a while. But what? Just give me a couple of the big storylines right now, David, as we get ready for this 2022 season. What are they?
Well, I think Bama on their quote-unquote redemption tour, they don't lose a lot, and they finished second last year, and they return the best offensive player in college football, the best defensive player in college football. Not only they've recruited like a fiend every year, but they've also transfer portaled a bunch of players that they brought in that they're going to need to win next year. So Bama will be one. And I think just the landscape of college football and expansion. Like, you've seen it that USC and UCLA are joining the Big Ten. And that's obviously, geography and rivalries and all that stuff kind of goes out the window. But college football is going to continue to expand and grow. And I think at some point in the near future, we're going to be at huge mega conferences. It's just a matter of how many that we get down to. But the landscape is definitely changing, and the world in college football obviously has shifted a lot over the last several years.
One of the things I love about listening to you, David, is it's very obvious you're not afraid to have an opinion. I appreciate that about you. I respect that about you. So on that topic of the landscape of college football, like, you're the commissioner. You just got named tomorrow. What would be your first order of business?
I would fix the transfer portal right now, because y'all know as well as I do, I went to college, bro, 45 minutes down the road from my house. 45. And I wanted to come home. So everybody's going to want to come home. Everybody's going to hit those situations where I don't know the school. I don't know where food is. I don't know how to get to class. My coaches suck because they're new and they're coaching me harder than I've ever been coached before. Like, we all go through that, and you've got to learn, and you've got to learn how to handle it and learn expectations and learn how to manage them. And then you push through and you start to become more comfortable with your situation. So I would have the transfer portal. I'm not saying get rid of it. I would open the transfer portal up after the season, after I've been through my crap, after I've been through my learning, my growing pains, my tough part of my schedule. So I have to stick it out. So coaches aren't worried about recruiting their own players the whole year and worried about who's going to leave and who's not happy. Like, we know we're all in this together. The season's over. Dude, you don't get along, you don't fit, you know good and well this is not the place for you. Fine, open the transfer portal up. You can take off now. Coaches know what they're dealing with from their roster standpoint. You know what you're dealing with your future. You can start to look into stuff. So I would immediately, find a way to close the transfer portal and open it once or twice a year, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. And real quick, Jimmy, doesn't it feel like, because I'm a baseball guy, Jimmy's a basketball guy, you're a football guy. All those, we're talking college sports, all those have different seasons where the portal is super impactful, right? So, and I know that there's been a lot of talk lately about college football basically just kind of being its own entity, which it kind of feels like it's trending towards. If you were commish, like, wouldn't you think that needs a college football transfer portal open and close as opposed to just all college sports?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would do. And then I mean, the next thing I would do, I'd visit the NIL too and make sure that we're taking care of kids and we have it structured in a way that, listen, the bottom line is there's got to be a way for players to get representation. There's got to be a way for players to understand what they're going through and what they're how to maximize their value, how to not tie it to future, I've got to do X, Y, and Z. By the way, we can talk about all these deals you want, bro. We can talk about all the deals you want. I'm going to make $7 million. Bull crap. If it's tied to you being on the roster and you being a starter and you being X, Y, and Z, you could make nothing. It's just like the NFL signing bonuses. I was one of them. If I got a roster bonus year 3, year 4, year 5. Well, I broke my neck year 2. You think I'm getting that roster bonus year 5? So my signing bonus looks grand and it looks great, but it also was tied to things that I had to be a part of that unfortunately I wasn't able to accomplish.
We're going to come back to that injury you had, David, but you were a 3-time All-American, Defensive Player of the Year. Man, you were a phenomenal player at the University of Georgia. But if you could go back and do it again, what would you do differently on or off the field, either one?
I love these questions. I absolutely love these questions. I ask them all the time to people I know, to people that have been through my journey, and they're going through journeys of their own with kids and stuff. I wouldn't change a thing about my football journey because I love what I poured into it and what I accomplished. And by the way, that being said, Jimmy, I played fullback my first six weeks on campus. I moved to defensive tackle because everybody got hurt. Everybody got drafted in after the season, and so I moved to defensive end. I played 3 positions in 6 months, 7-8 months on campus.
Wow!
So it's not like it was, oh my God, this was the most easy thing ever, and right away I just slid into my home. I tell people all the time, like, wherever you're at, go maximize it. And you've heard it, like bloom where you're planted, like where your feet are, be there. And that's one thing that I think I did a pretty good job of. One thing that I did a horrible job of was school. I wish I would have done a lot better job in school, going to class, paying attention, making it a priority because, I did. I knew after my sophomore year I was going to go play in the NFL, but I also didn't know what was next. I thought I was going to play for 10, 15 years. I didn't think I was going to break my neck and my career be over like that. And then you're going – emoji shrug, like, what the heck am I going to do? I didn't have a clue. And so I think I would have paid more attention to school. And I think I would have probably handled myself, differently off the field. I would have plugged into, I'd have been a more positive influence. I'd have spent more time with charities, with community. I'd have done a better job with that as well.
So you've talked about breaking your neck a couple times, and it's interesting. This is a crazy our paths cross story. You would never know this, but a buddy of mine, literally one of my best friends, is Carson Palmer's agent. So we went up to watch him play. So I got drafted in 2001. Your all season was my off season. So we used to go up to Cincinnati and watch Carson Palmer play, like in my off seasons. And one of the years I think it was the year you broke your neck. And I actually remember seeing you in the suites. We were up in Carson's box. I remember seeing you in the suites with your neck brace on. And as a guy who went to Tennessee and followed Southeastern Conference football, I remembered you very well as a player. And here I was, right in the start of my career and, healthy as a horse. And I remember looking at you it's crazy the stuff you remember like that. Why would I really have a vivid remembrance of that? But I really remember watching you walk around with a neck brace on and having compassion's not a strength of mine, but I had I was just looking at you man, that is rough, And then I kind of lost touch up with you for a while. I was off doing my thing. And next thing you know, you're on ESPN. So I would love to hear you unpack, number one, just the story. I know you've said it a million times, so forgive us, but I think some of our listeners will hear it for the first time. And then what God taught you through that season.
Well, it's interesting because I tell people all the time, and I know it sounds crazy even coming out of my mouth again, but okay, so first I'll tell the story. I'm going into my second season. It was the second play of the second game, and I had a goal. I wanted to be a physical thumper. I wanted to get better at being more physical, and I dropped back. It was a draw play, so I think it was pass. I dropped back a couple steps, and I come up, and I smashed the running back with everything I have. And it was the first time that after I hit him, I went down, and I couldn't move my body from my waist up. And so I knew something was wrong, but it felt like when you fall asleep on your hands and your hands are asleep and you're kind of wigging out for a second. You're like, dude, wake up, wake up, wake up. And they didn't. Yeah. They didn't wake up, and it was strange. And they took me under the stadium, and they cut off my pads and my stuff, and they got me an MRI. And they're like, hey, within an hour, I knew, hey, you fractured your C6, C7. And I was like, what's that? A couple weeks? No big deal. He's like, no. That means you broke your neck. And I was like, ooh, can we stick to the fractured C7? Because that sounds a lot cooler than a broken neck. That's for dang sure. And then it was straight there, in the ambulance. And I'll never forget, man. I mean, from when I was 6 years old, my dream was to play in the NFL, play in the NFL, play in the NFL. And along the way, I got so many pats on the head, right? Like, oh yeah, so does everybody else. And it's amazing and I tell people all the time, like, don't ever let people tell you what you can and can't do, because God can do amazing things through small people. And we can go through the Bible and share those stories ad nauseum about what's God done in so many people's lives. And so within an instant, football now was gone. And so I lost millions of dollars. I lost fame. I lost the sport that I loved the absolute most in my life. And I can tell you, Jimmy and Chris, without a shadow of a doubt, that is the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life. The greatest thing. Because I've never, you want to know who's in your corner really quickly for the right reasons? You want to know who's going to go through life, man, and pick up their sword and fight with you? You want to know, you want to know about patience? You want to know about hard days and how to fight through them and persevere? Man, that made me a better husband. That made me a better dad. That made me a better son. That made me better in every aspect of my future life by going through something like that. Like, God literally, put that on my plate and took football out of my life and said, the Bible says, be still and know that I am God. I have never done that in my life up to that point.
Yep.
If I had 10 minutes, I'm going to run a mile. I had 20 minutes, I'm going to work out, blah, blah, blah. I ain't being still. And God said, no, bro, you're going to be still. And I got to hear from him, and I got to see what life looked like. And listen, I had no clue ESPN was coming. I had no clue whatsoever, nor did I ever think. I didn't like the media. I don't know about y'all, but I was like, man, they're obnoxious. Like, I'm not a big fan of the media all the time. And so literally, it happened just like that. One day, one play, and my whole world was changed. But I look back now and I'm like, dang, I got Leah and I got Nicholas, my two precious babies, and I'm this close from not having them. And I get to tell them my story, and I get to show them what it looked like to have dark days and tell my story to my high school athletes. I coach high school football now here in Athens, and I get to tell my story and try to tell them to appreciate life and appreciate what they have. So it was definitely a dark day that turned into a lot of light for me.
That's how God works. That is exactly how God works. I want to ask you something that Buzz Williams, a head coach at Texas A&M, talking with him recently, and he said, he's asked the question, how do you want to be remembered? And I love his answer. I want to get your answer to this. But he said, I want to be famous in my own home. I was like, wow, that's going to be hard to top. Like, that's going to be hard to top as a follower of the way right now, as a believer in Christ and what we're called to do. How would you answer that, David? How do you want to be? I know you're young. You got everything a lot in front of you, but how do you want to be remembered?
That's flipping fantastic, by the way. I love that. I love that answer.
Isn't that a great answer?
It's a great answer. But it's funny because I asked my kids this the other day because I was listening to a sermon, and it was a really awesome. And it was talking about, what do you want to be known for? And I sat down with my son and my daughter, and I'm like, what do you want to be known for? Like, when your buddies go home and the parents that go home that meet you and your teachers go home from school, like, what do you want them to say about Leah Pollack? What do you want them to say about Nicholas Pollack? And I talked to my kids, and my son was like, well, what do you say, Daddy? And I say the word that always comes to mind for me is authentic. Like, I want to be authentic. I want to be someone in your life that I want to be authentic. I want to be a positive person in your life. Like, somebody that is always going to be there, somebody that's always going to fight for you, somebody that's going to tell you what they think, but not what you want to hear all the time. I take a lot of pride in being a person that, like, I had years ago, I had a buddy that we went on a trip, and I'm not, obviously would never give out his name. We went on a trip, man, me and him and a couple other couples, all adult trip. And at the airport, he said a couple things to his wife. And a couple years later, or not a couple days later, I prayed about it, and I was like, how do I want to say this? A couple days later, man, I called him, and I was like, listen, this has been on my heart, and I just want to tell you, like, you don't talk to your wife like that. Like, that's the most important person on this earth in our life. Like, you cannot use those words. You cannot do that in front of other people. Like, you can't do that. And that's what I want to take a lot of pride in, is being somebody who's authentic, that's always pushing you to be the best version of you. That's always, I'm always cheering you on. I'm always positive. I don't want to cause you to stumble in any way, shape, or form, but I want to be that friend that when you got something going on, man, no judgment, because I've screwed up so many things, but I'm going to shoot you straight, and I'm going to be real with you, and you might not want to hear it, but it's something that hopefully you go, man, that's what I needed to hear.
Man,
clear is kind, right? Clear is kind. We got a lot of people in this world that they have a hard time with confrontation, and the reality is, man, give it to me. If I got a blind spot somewhere, I'd rather you tell me than not, right? That's what friendship's all about. You mentioned that you're now coaching high school football. I know that at one point last year, Herb Street was praising your middle school football team. So I'm currently coaching. I coach a middle school football team and a 3rd and 4th grade football team.
Get ready, David.
Coach me up.
David, get ready.
Coach
Here we
me
go.
up. Now, we're not going to talk about football. We're not talking about football necessarily. We're going to talk about coach me up on how somebody that played the game at the highest level makes coaching football more than just about the X's and O's.
F-U-N. Fun. It ain't got nothing to do with trying to make our kids. You are way more likely to turn kids off than you are to make them a superstar or make them something special. Like, everything has to be fun. Like, you need to make it like jumping with them as much as you can. Like, joke with them as much as you can. Get to know them as much as you can. But, like, the game is supposed to be fun. Listen, Chris, I want them to learn the same lessons you want them to learn. I want them to learn about toughness and how to lose, how to win, how to block, learn the skills. But, man, you control your attitude, kids, and you control your effort. That's it. You don't control whether you win. You don't control whether you lose. And here's another thing, too, with young kids. Why are we putting the emphasis on results? Why do we say, when a kid gets in the car, hey, that was an awesome touchdown. That's not what I'm about when I get in the car. Like, when I get in the car with my kids, I'm like, listen, first off, I love you. Whether you sucked or you were the best player on the field, I love you so much. I love watching you play. Did you try your hardest? Yes, sir. Did you have fun? Yes, sir. That's all that matters. Like, I think we overcomplicate it with so many things, but like, we want this to be something where they embrace a journey and they learn to love the work and they learn to love teammates. And to do that, here's the thing, Chris, why are we conditioning? I coached my kid since he was 5 years old, all the way to 12U. Now he's in 8th grade, and I'm coaching with high school. Why do we condition? Why do we get on the line and run up and down and make it miserable for them to condition? Practice harder. Be a better coach. Keep them entertained. Keep them in drills. Break into small groups and help them work skills and individual things. But I can promise you this. If it's always about results and it's always about the X, Y, and Z, here's what happens with kids. They play not to fail. They play with fear of failure. But when you say, dude, I circle my kids up before every game and I say, hey, guys, who's going to mess up? And I make all of them raise their hand. And I raise my hand, too, because I'm like, I'm going to mess up as your coach today. Mess up full speed, dude. Mess up 4,000 miles an hour, having a blast. Smile. Celebrate with your teammates. Like, have fun, because that's what playing sports is. Playing sports and being a young kid, it's about fun.
No, I love what you just said about the who's going to mess up, because I talk to them all the time. I need grace. You need grace. Like, I'm going to coach you, but I'm going to mess up too. So let's just give each other grace back and forth, because we got to have it. It's a beautiful Christian principle of being a good teammate. No, that's beautiful. Tim Corbin, real quick, Jimmy. Tim Corbin, what you just said about why do we line up and just run, right? Mm-hmm. Tim Corbin, the famous head baseball coach at Vanderbilt, has won 2 national championships, told me one time, first of all, he doesn't call it practice, training. They don't practice at Vanderbilt. They train. But he said, so I always give him a hard time about that. But he said, we never run for punishment. Running is part of what makes you a great player. You should want to run. So he's like, if our dudes get in trouble, they they clean the weight room. They vacuum the team room. Like, that's what our kids do when they get in trouble. It's like, when we are training, we run. And if we're ever going to do just pure running, like you're saying, there's ways to do running that isn't just get on the line and run, right?
Yeah.
But that really shaped me. He told me about 6-7 years ago when I was just on the front part of my coaching journey, and I was like, man, I am writing that down. I'm circling that one. Like, we're not going to – I don't want you to view running as a punishment. It's part of your craft.
Nope.
So anyway, I love that. I love that.
David, I view you as a tough guy. Okay, but that my definition of tough is different than a lot of people's. But Jesus was also, he was tough. He was tender, but he was tough. That word tough or toughness is on every practice facility that I walk into across the country in college basketball, on a wall somewhere. That word toughness resonates in college basketball, college baseball, college football, in life, on down the line. Coach us up on toughness. Tell us what that really means.
I think it just means strong enough to withstand adversity. You know, you're somebody that doesn't blink. You're somebody that no matter what comes your way, whether it be mental, whether it be physical, whatever it is, whatever comes your way, you look at the situation and you go, let's handle it. You don't run. A lot of people run. A lot of people look at a situation, they run. A lot of people look at a situation, make excuses. Every situation that comes my way, I'm able to sit up, own it like a man, wear it, and go get it, and go attack it. Like that to me sums it up. And I love what you said about Jesus, because so many people look at Jesus and think passive. He was passive. He was meek. We hear about meek. The meek shall inherit the earth. Meek is meek is strength. Meek is not something that's that's not a negative. That's a great thing. And Jesus showed passion. You know, Jesus showed power. But Jesus also got frustrated when he came in the temple and flipped tables over. Like, you know, he wasn't just a guy that walked around. I mean, think about what Jesus did in all these situations. Jesus changed the way we looked at women. He changed the way we looked at poverty. He changed the way we looked at everybody. Yep. That's not a position. That's not meek. Hang on one second. Barkley. Goodness gracious. Sorry, my dog's barking. I don't want to ruin us. Yeah. Barkley. Hey, come here. Lay down. Lay down. All right.
He's telling you to preach.
Yeah.
Preach.
Lay down. Lay down. Yeah.
I love it.
Are y'all editing this? I hope we can edit this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're good. No, you're good.
Right.
No, you're good. Absolutely, you're good.
But I think that I think we misconstrue that sometimes in how we look at it. But I think you know, when you look at Jesus' example and how tough he was on the cross, you look at his example, how tough he was to stand in the face of people and preach about hell. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's not a fun topic to approach. Like, and the way he handled his disciples, he led. So I think that word can be used differently. But toughness is definitely something, mental, physical toughness, that you'll see in every locker room, and you'll talk about it in every locker room. And by the way, you're going to need it in your life, because you're going to have that. And that's why I think everybody loves sports so much, because it brings up real life situations of how I'm going to have to handle adversity and those things when they come my way.
My college head coach, I want Chris to jump back in here, Eddie Sutton, who's a Hall of Famer. He was tough, old school tough. But he used to tell us he wanted us to be the toughest team always on the floor. And he said, here's what I mean by that. We do what's right when it's hard to do what's right. That has always stuck with me. Like, to me, some of the toughest people I know are 83 years old, but they do what's right when it's hard to do what's right. Day after day after day after day. I love that definition. I think it resonates in my how I try to lead myself, which is the most difficult person to lead anyways, is yourself. Yeah. In my faith walk, like, do I do what's right when it's hard to do what's right? Toughness in baseball, Chris, it resonates with all of our sports. I know it does. And certainly
Jimmy, real quick, one second. One second.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I like that you said about that, Jimmy. You said, "Do what's right." And here's the thing, and this is to me very biblical, obviously. But you know when you're wrong, Jimmy, and you admit you're wrong, you're not wrong anymore. When you're wrong,
you did what's right.
You're wrong. You're not wrong anymore. Like, whether you're fighting with your spouse, whatever you're doing in your life, like, think about those situations that come up when you own it and like, baby, I shouldn't have talked to you that way. I'm wrong. I was completely wrong. Well, guess you're right now. But we get so caught up with a lot of times with, I'm going to win my argument. I'm going to win this debate. I'm dug in. Oh, crap. She just brought up a really good point. Like, but you know what? I'm going to finish where I started. My flag is planted. No. Well, we can say, I'm wrong. Like, I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that to a friend, to a family member, to someone you coach. Like that is the definition of being right to me, and in a way that you can really show that toughness and show that ability to be right, because you become right when you do that, I think.
Yeah, well, that literally are some of the, I've said to Ben a few times, like, a lot of you guys would take a bullet for your wife, but you won't grab her hand and pray with her. Like, which one's tougher? You know what I mean? Like, which one's tougher? Like, and I tell my kids that I coach, like, is it?
I'll say this, though. It is awkward.
Go ahead.
It can be awkward, 100%, just full disclosure, like everybody out there is saying, like, but when
that's what makes it tough.
Yes.
No, but that's what makes it tough, right? And so this is my point. Like, I tell our boys, is it tougher to push the kid who cussed at you under his breath, or is it tougher to walk away from him? Which one's tougher? Because to me, somebody says something ugly to me under my breath, that's the easy thing to do, is to push him.
It is.
The tough thing to do is to walk away and play the next play. That's the tough thing. So if we're about being tough dudes, right? If we're about being tough dudes, like, let's choose the tougher thing, which really leads to my next question. You mentioned your wife a few times. It's obviously near and dear to your heart. Coach me up on a guy who's all over the map, speaking and broadcasting, who's coaching high school football, who's trying to be an intentional dad. I imagine you got other business things going on too. Coach me up on how you keep your wife. What's her name?
Lindsay.
What's your wife's name?
Lindsay.
Lindsay. How do you keep Lindsay first? How do you keep her first?
Man, this is a great question. The first thing that I do with my children, that I make sure that I stand, like my daughter Leah, she's 12, she's interesting, she's a 7th grade girl, so there's obviously drama, and we're going through some hormones and some interesting times in our life for sure. But I always say it all the time. I'm like, Leah, you know who number one is, right? And she's like, yes, I know, it's mommy. First, that's the first thing. The first thing I do is I show my kids who's number one. And I show them, and listen, God's first. I'm talking about who's number one on this planet, and that's Lindsay Pollack. That's my wife.
Sure.
So how do I do that? Chris, when I walk in the door or when I leave my house, I don't kiss my 7th grader and my 8th grader. I kiss my wife first. I purposely go right to my baby doll, and I give her a kiss, and I show my kids she's number one. I make sure when she needs something done around the house, I'm gonna step up. I'm gonna do it. She ordered something the other day that she wanted we drive her nuts with our shoes, and I'm a culprit. We put our shoes by the door, and it drives her nuts. She ordered this thing. She was like, I measured it. It'll fit right outside the door. We can put all of our shoes. I told Nicholas last night, I'm like, buddy, mommy's training right now. She's a personal trainer. Mommy's training. I said, buddy, let's get it right now. And let's put it together and have it waiting for her so we can put our shoes in. I was like, she'll be jacked. She'll be so excited out of her mind. But I think, obviously showing my kids, but while I'm busy, making it a point, like, she's not just there when I need her to be there. She's not just there when I need an update. Like, I want her to know, like, every day that I'm thinking about her. I want her to know when I wake up. Like, I'll send a prayer to her, let her know I'm praying for her. Like, I'm going to tell her, first thing I do when I call her, I'm going to make sure I ask about her day, not my freaking day. Like, we always talk about my crap because it tends to be exciting and, who did you interview? Who did we do? Like, how was the crowd? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. How's your knee? Because she recently she had knee surgery. How's your knee? You took the kids to school. How were they this morning? How were Nicholas and Leah with you? How did they treat you? So I think, those are tangible things that, in my journey, in my walk, that I want her to know, man. I want her to know where she stands. I want her to know how much I love her, and I want to show that to her. And that's with everybody I'm around, by the way. When I'm with my friends and we go on a trip or we go to a concert, like, I'm grabbing my bride's hand. Friends are awesome. Friends are great. I love spending time with friends. But I love my baby doll more than anybody. And I love my wife more than anybody. And I want her to be happy. I want her to have fun. So I want to be her number one. I want her to be my number one. And not just all the stuff that we tend to get caught up in, as opposed to making it very simple. Like, okay, I can wait on her. Before I go somewhere, I can wait on her. Make sure she's taken care of. And I know those are little things, and I know it's all over the place. But those are just things that are always important to me.
No, it's good.
It's great. No,
can you just say baby doll again? Can you just say baby doll one more time?
That's my baby doll.
I'll be good. I love it. That's so Southern. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. I'll throw this in there for all of us, actually, and a reminder to me. You mentioned about praying with your wife and holding her hand. I was challenged about 4 years ago to pray with my family every morning. Not pray for them, pray with them. Like, go grab Kennedy out of bed as a teenager. Go grab Tiffany before they head off to – she's the cheerleading coach at Kennedy's High School. And we pray every morning together. I think it's changed the dynamic in my home as much as anything. Because it's as a leader, I'm trying to put God in his right place every morning before we leave. And it really has – I guess it's a challenge. As you're talking and coaching us up on, Dave, it just made me reflect on how important that time has been with me. So I appreciate you saying grab your wife's hand and pray with her. It's hard to do, but pray with your family, not just for them all the time. Hey, David, coach us up. We're getting close to the end because you're so gracious with your time, but coach us up on a scripture or a story that really impacts you right now. I know you got a bunch of them you could choose from. Just coach us up on one.
This is really hard. You sent this to me, and I absolutely love this exercise of thinking about Scripture and what is the best, like, motivating, or and obviously the resurrection is and this is the Sunday school answer, and is something that you're going to read about, like the story of Christmas, like what it means, like the story of Jesus. But one thing that I always continually get touched, and I think is just always amazing, is you think about Paul and you think about who he was. Okay, so Paul, and you think about him biblically, he wrote, over 14 books in the New Testament, probably the most influential person in Christianity in the New Testament outside of Jesus. Well, if you read about Paul and you go back to Acts and you read about Stephen getting stoned to death, who was one of the first, people to be stoned to death that you hear about as a Christian, and you hear about, and he was faithful. Well, Paul was there, but Paul's name was Saul. And Saul was a bad dude. He was a young dude at that point, but he was a guy, Saul, that would go door to door and take Christians and go and imprison them. He would do worse and do worse to him physically. And that wasn't enough for Saul, that he went to the high priest and he was like, dude, I want to go get all the Christians. I want to get all of them, and I want to get them all away, and I want to I want to go to the synagogues in Damascus, and I want to get rid of Christianity altogether. It needs to go away. Like, I hate Christianity. And Saul is on his way to Damascus to do that very thing, and what happens? He gets hit right in the face with the most powerful thing ever created, or ever existed, ever created. God hits him right in the face and is like, what are you doing? What do you do? He's blind immediately. He's blind for the next 3 days. Can't see. Like, hears the audible voice of God. And Saul, who has killed Christians, imprisoned Christians, from the time he was a boy, chased after, trying to make sure Christianity doesn't get bigger, doesn't get more influence. And what does he do? He turns to become Paul and becomes chasing Jesus with everything he has. No matter what you've done in your life, no matter how many times you've screwed up, that's how much God loves us still. Like, to take the horrible things you think about in the dark and the things you wish you could go back and undo, it's a part of your story. Like, but I just think it's one of the most powerful scriptures, I think, for everybody. And it shows you what someone can do when you're faced with God and you hear God and you answer that call, and you can watch him take over your life And to me, the Christian faith, and people go back and forth about debating this, that, and the other. Look at how every single one of the apostles died, or one of the disciples. Look at how all the disciples died. They died horrible deaths, crucified upside down, stoned to death. Like, why didn't they just go, dude, this ain't real? Like, you know what? I'm wrong. Like, I was telling y'all about this, but hold up a minute. Like, I just kidding.
Yeah,
like,
I'm out.
But they literally said, no, bro. Like, I saw Jesus resurrected. I saw the scars in his hands. Like, I saw him die. I saw him rise. Like, the Bible isn't a Jesus story. This is a story about a man that walked the earth that if you read in history about kings get like a footnote, a page. Like, this king did this. In historical context and historical references, they didn't write Wikipedia pages back then. Like, it was like, what are you going to take from him to move forward? This was a Samaritan who was born in a manger that nobody knew anything about or cared about, that the greatest document of a life was ever historically categorized, and it became the Bible. But it wasn't written it wasn't a Bible story. It was written because of Jesus's life and what he did, the miracles he performed, the prophecies that talked about him coming, the prophecies that he fulfilled, and what he did on a cross, what he did to raise out of that grave. And so that story always fires me up. It touches me because it doesn't matter what you've done throughout your life and what you've experienced and the bad things, because God can take your life step by step, small step at a time, and make it a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And there's no telling what he'll do down the road in the future.
Amen to that.
Woo!
Amen to that. And that's as encouraging story as there is in the Bible. Absolutely right. It doesn't matter where you are in life. You want to talk about
the definition of toughness, Paul.
Oh, my. That's it.
Wow. No tougher dude. Next to Jesus, there ain't no tougher dude than Paul.
David, you have been a phenomenal guest. Phenomenal guest. We had Reese Davis has been on with us, too. I know you're a mentor to him, and you lead your life in front of him in a way that challenges him just like you challenge all of us today. And we can't wait to watch you this fall. I mean, you are outstanding. You give strong opinions. You're enthusiastic about it. You're passionate about it. But more than anything, you're passionate about your walk with God and just having a real authentic walk with him. Like Chris and I, like we're just like you, man, just trying to go through life, trying to honor God with how we're doing it. And man, you coached us up today, and I can't tell you from Chris and I both how much we appreciate who you are, but then giving us your time today as college football is about to begin, brother. Man, we love you and we appreciate you coming on with us.